Have you ever heard of the phenomenon of orgasmic birth? When I first heard about it, I kind of thought it was BS. I thought, yeah, right, childbirth is supposed to be the most painful thing we ever experience. How does that go with one of the most pleasurable things we ever experience? I'm not buying it. While I did not have an orgasmic birth, I have since witnessed them and they're pretty amazing and they're very possible. So I get the question a lot, is an orgasmic birth actually possible? It absolutely is. However, that might not mean that you are like swimming in orgasms the whole time. It might not even mean that you have an actual orgasm. And so I'll get to in a minute what I mean by orgasmic birth. It's lovely and euphoric, but again, might not have actual orgasms in it. Because let's see, only about 6% of women actually have an orgasm during birth, but that number could be higher because some women don't really feel comfortable reporting their orgasms. Something else about orgasming is that your genes, your genetics, account for about like 34 to 45% of your ability to climax. But I mean, obviously you don't know what your orgasm gene level is, but you do know how easy it is for you to orgasm normally, right? So if you can easily dip into that sea of pleasure, it might be a lot easier for you to orgasm during birth. If it's a little bit harder for you to get to that orgasm, then you might need to like really work the tips that I'm about to get to. All the while remembering you can still have an orgasmic birth without having the actual orgasms. Okay, so beyond the genetics, what's the deal with orgasms being able to show up during birth? So, two of the regions in the brain, the anterior cingulated cortex and insula, that are active during orgasm, are also active during painful experiences, like childbirth. And in addition, orgasm and childbirth, they both produce strong surges of blood, oxytocin, and endorphins, and they also stimulate the birth passage, cervix, clitoris, and vagina. So there you go. Orgasm and childbirth weren't the antonyms we once thought them to be. Okay, so now to the orgasmic part of this. I want to shake up this question. Is it possible to have an orgasmic birth? Or I want to shift the way we're thinking about this question from thinking about, is it possible for me to have rolling orgasms during birth, to is it possible to have an orgasmic birth? And what I mean by orgasmic is a birth filled with euphoria, empowerment, transformation, joy, connection, love. 100%, it is incredibly possible to have that kind of birth. Whether or not there's actual orgasms thrown in there, that's a little bit trickier, but you can have that euphoric birth experience. Okay, so what do we do to set ourselves up for an orgasmic birth experience, potentially an orgasm-filled birth experience? So one of the first things is to prepare. Every single woman that I've witnessed having an orgasmic birth or orgasms during birth did a ton of preparation. All of them took at least one childbirth preparation class, specifically one that really focused on the mind-body connection, like hypnobirthing or birthing from within. Every single one of these women also read the book Orgasmic Birth, and they also read the book Orgasmic Birth. It's by Elizabeth Davis and Deborah Pascali Bonaro. And then they watched the documentary Orgasmic Birth, The Best Kept Secret. And from there, after really diving into these resources, they actively practiced their favorite techniques from the classes, the book, and the movie. They really submerged themselves in those practices every single day. They practiced. As my grandmother would say, they didn't go into birth all willy-nilly. So really put in your preparation, really practice those soothing, pain relieving techniques, fear release, because as many of us know, the mind can be one of our biggest blocks to an orgasm. If we're distracted, if we're thinking about other things, it's harder to let that pleasure roll through us. So really helping to resolve fears and anxieties, leaving the mind clear and open can allow that orgasmic experience to flow in. Okay, holding a belief in orgasmic birth. When you go into childbirth really believing that that type of experience is possible, it makes it possible. And part of that belief is a trust that birth is not just composed of pain. Sure, pain is usually a component of it, but that's not all it is. It can also be infused with beautiful moments of connection with your body, your baby, your partner. It holds the power to unleash this really deep, beautiful confidence and power in yourself. You can absolutely unlock your inner goddess during birth. So I really encourage you to hold on to that belief and go into birth with it. Okay, something else that's really important is examining your beliefs around sexuality. So did you grow up with the belief that masturbation and sex were taboo? If so, you're not alone. A lot of us did. I know that I did, even though my parents probably didn't intentionally make that a taboo topic. I mean, society really does in so many ways. But we can begin shifting those perceptions around masturbation and sex. So one of the first things to do is examine where those beliefs came from. Are they things that you actually believe on the deepest level, or are your beliefs about sex, masturbation, sexuality in general, orgasm, are they ideas that were planted by someone else? So just kind of start exploring who, what has inspired your beliefs around sexuality. Next, you can connect to your sexuality by masturbating and noting what turns you on, what type of pressure and speed does it for you, where do you like to be touched. You can also share your findings with your partner, get them involved, get more creative with sex, with positions. Really connecting with your sexuality, with intimacy as much as possible with yourself and with your partner if you would like. During pregnancy can make it that much easier to access orgasm and orgasmic feelings during childbirth. Okay, next, I encourage you to edit certain birth words. So there's certain words that we use around childbirth that are really fearful and constrictive. So one word that I actually use all the time, I need to use it less, is contraction. So the word contraction, it feels really constrictive and contracting. Instead, we want to use the word surge, because when you think about an orgasm, you feel this like surge of blood and pressure and pleasure moving through you. So instead of contraction, we want to say surge. You can even put this in your birth preferences and tell the care providers, please use the word surge instead of contraction. Another one is pain. When we think of pain, we typically feel more pain. So instead of thinking and saying, oh, I'm feeling a lot of pain right now, really name what you're feeling during birth. So as you're having a contraction, really figure out what the sensations are. For example, I am feeling a lot of pressure in my lower abdomen. I'm feeling a pulling on the side of my abdomen. So really, really naming the sensations instead of using the blanket label of pain. All right, next, consider a birth center or home birth, or really think about how you can create a soothing environment in the hospital. So think about it. It's typically a lot easier to have an orgasm when you're in a private space or a private, comfortable space, right? So a home birth, obviously that's one of your most private, safest spaces. So you could have a home birth midwife if you don't have any special circumstances that would make that unsafe. Birth centers are also typically pretty homey, very comfortable, low lighting, lots of privacy. But if for whatever reason you need to be in a hospital, or if you simply feel more comfortable with the idea of being in a hospital, of course that's fine. There's so many things you can do to create a soothing environment in a hospital. You can have battery-powered candles, keep the lights down low, bring a special pillow, blanket, soft robe, turn on soothing music. I encourage you to think about your five senses and then bring elements to the hospital that will help you nurture those five senses. And asking for complete privacy. This is crucial, right? It's pretty hard to have an orgasm when you have like a midwife or a doctor and a couple nurses, maybe your in-laws standing in the room. So if you want to try for an orgasmic birth, ask everybody but your partner to leave the room. And if you think even having your partner with you might throw you off, you can go into the bathroom. That's a really private space. You can turn off the lights. You can be totally alone with yourself. And what do you do next? You stimulate your clitoris. Masturbate. Because for many women, that is one of the only ways that they can really orgasm or really get into that pleasure-filled space. So stimulate the clitoris. And as I say this, I know that a lot of women resist that idea, especially during birth, because almost all of us strongly associate masturbation with sex, right? I mean, I never had any other association with it but sex until I started diving into orgasmic birth research. So what I encourage you to do, if that's like tripping you up, if you're thinking, well, I don't want to incorporate something that's super sexual into the birth of my baby, it feels weird to like mix the two, I encourage you to change the way that you think about masturbation. So I want you to just think of it as another pain relieving tool to use during childbirth. You can even change what it's called. So instead of masturbation, we can call it a pain soothing vaginal massage, and just really see it as a way to minimize your pain during childbirth, because orgasm, masturbation, it helps to reduce pain in significant ways. So again, just think of it as an amazing way that you're supporting yourself through birth. I've also known women that brought vibrators to childbirth, and they went into the bathroom with their vibrator, they did their thing, nobody even knew what they were doing. And if somebody did know, so what? You get to use whatever devices you need to use to get through childbirth. Of course, with these women, they're not actually putting anything inside of them, but they would use the vibrator on their clitoris. Something else to do is moan. So when you feel like you're at this tipping point between pain and pleasure, and that surge is rolling through you, and you might even feel that like orgasm trying to come on, you can do a really low moan, kind of like a cow, and just keep it low. We don't want any like hi stuff like this. We want to keep it really low and long, and this can help to push you into pleasure. Okay, something else that's really helpful is rubbing your nipples. This can help release oxytocin. It can stimulate stronger surges. You can do it to yourself or have your partner do it to you. Again, you can ask for privacy before doing nipple stimulation. Breathing. So deep breathing will really facilitate your ability to get into that orgasmic space. So when you feel a surge coming on, I want you to take a really long, slow inhalation through your nose, envisioning a balloon inflating in your abdomen. When that balloon is fully inflated, really, 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 really slowly deflating that balloon and then starting all over again. And if you hit like what feels like a wall of resistance, like, oh, I just can't keep breathing anymore. If I do, it's gonna really, really hurt. I really encourage you to keep breathing, to keep expanding your abdomen, because a lot of times this busts through that wall of resistance and can sometimes topple you over into that sea of orgasm. So just keep breathing, keep focusing on those deep breaths, because when we start to hold our breath and tighten up, that really reduces our chances of having an orgasmic experience, and it increases our pain level. So keep breathing. Okay. We also want to remember that pain is not the enemy. An orgasmic birth does not mean you feel absolutely no pain. Again, a lot of times the orgasm comes from us like kind of teetering between pain and pleasure, and then using the tools I've been talking about to tip over into pleasure. But knowing that pain does not mean that you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong with your body. It is a very normal part of birth. But again, doing all the tips that I've been suggesting help you get over into that orgasmic space more often than not. But again, not being afraid of the pain. And a lot of times resisting that pain intensifies it and makes it harder to get out of it. So just saying, okay, in this moment, I'm feeling pain, but I'm breathing, I'm expanding, I'm releasing, I'll get back to that orgasmic space. Okay, connecting to an orgasmic energy orbit. So what does that mean? So some women that I've worked with, when I tell them to just envision that this warm, euphoric liquid is moving down through them, this really juicy, euphoric feeling. So that helps some women get into that orgasmic energy orbit. Other women envision that like constellations or like the stars are spiraling above them and spiraling down through their body, condensing in their vagina and shooting out. So that can be another visualization you use to like absorb that orgasmic energy orbit into your body. And finally, submerging yourself in warm water as much as possible. Warm water helps to relax the muscles, and leave you open to orgasmic birth. If you want to see a really amazing orgasmic birth, Google Birth as We Know It educational version. And it's about a 30-minute video that shows the most amazing orgasmic birth. She's having like rolling orgasms and her eyes are rolling back in her head. It's pretty inspirational. All right, if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments below.